Today in our 2014 Ram 2500, we're going to be taking a look at showing you how to install the Demco Hijacker Premier Series above bed base rails. Part number DM8552025-71. This is what our rails look like when they're installed. These are going to provide connection point for your slider or fifth wheel. They're going to install fairly simple. They're all your brackets from underneath the bed. And your rails on top are going to be powder coated finish to resist rust and corrosion. It's going to come with all the necessary hardware to get it installed and mounts to existing holes that are already in the frame. So the first thing we're going to do to start our installation is we're going to bring one of your rails up into the bed of your truck. Now it's not going to matter which rail you bring up here, but we're going to be measuring the rail that's closest to the tailgate. First thing we want to do is kind of get it as close to the center in between the wheel wells as possible. And we're going to be marking, per the instructions, this inside hole. So we're going to measure whatever that distance is per your truck bed. You're going to have different sizes for different length beds. And we're going to measure both sides. Once you get that measured, you're going to measure from the wheel well to the edge of the rail. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side, and that's going to give you your center. Take a paint marker, just going to mark the center of that hole. And we're going to do the same thing with this hole. Next, it might be a good idea to have a hole punch. We're going to mark the center of this hole. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And we're going to drill a pilot hole. Small drill bit. You want to make sure you check underneath the bed of the truck so that you're not going to drill into anything. Next, you're going to take a 5/8 inch bit per the instructions and then drill out the holes. And then we'll repeat that on the other side of the truck. Next, you're going to take 2 of your 3-inch carriage bolts from your rail kit. And we're going to drop them in the holes. Then you're going to take your second rail and we're going to lighten the back of the bed. And you're going to take your plates that mount on the side of your slider. You're going to have one that says driver, one that says passenger. You'll notice it has a little lip here, like this. That's going to be toward the back of the vehicle. What we're going to do is we're going to take them and we're going to set them in place. And this will give us our spread for our rail that's going to be toward the front of the vehicle. Next thing I want to do is I want to measure for my wheel well to make sure that we're centered. Once you have it marked center on this back rail, you're going to go to the 3rd square hole from the outside. Drill a pilot hole. Drill our 5/8 inch hole. And we're going to repeat that on the other side. Next thing I want to do is we have to drill a hole, an inch hole from the bottom going up to put our hardware on. Now there's a bracket that goes in between there so that the hat bracket that runs across the bed doesn't collapse. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill a pilot hole from the top down because there's factory holes that are off center of where our holes are now. I'm going to take a long drill bit. Next we'll take a 1-inch hole saw and drill the hole from the bottom. Next we'll line up our holes. We're going to take our 5/8 by 6-inch hex bolt and we're going to drop it down through like this on both sides. Next thing we're going to do, you can see some of the lines here on the driver's side are going to be in the way of our bracket. We're going to need to pull them off of the frame. I'm just going to use a long trim panel tool. We're going to pop these right out of them. These are hard lines, so we don't want to break them. You're going to have 2 holes in the side of your frame where the bracket's going to sit. Next, you're going to have brackets. You have driver front, passenger front, driver rear, passenger rear. Over here on the front side of the bed, we're going to be using this bracket. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install, these 2 are going to go into the frame rail themselves. This one is going up through the bottom of the bed with a spacer in between. My wires are holding up my bracket, so I'm going to go ahead and put this spacer in now. We're going to slide it over like that, get it up through the hole. Then you're going to have a large washer and a lock nut. So if you look up right here, you can see how our frame bracket, there's a gap between the frame and the bracket right here. There is a spacer block that you're going to slide in between to fill that gap up. You're going to take a hex bolt, a split block washer, follow up by a flat washer. It's going to be going into the existing weld nuts in the side of the frame to hold your bracket on. Take a 3/4 inch socket, tighten these down to the frame rail. And then we're going to do the same thing to the other side of the vehicle. So we've determined that over our bracket that's going to be on the rear on the passenger side is a little bit hard to get to because of the spare tire. So we're going to go ahead and take our spare tire down. Next thing I want to do is remove the heat shield. We're going to use a 10mm socket. We're going to have 4 bolts. Right here toward the back, we're going to have 2 weld nuts for our rear brackets, and you're going to have this on both sides of the vehicle. And again, our large flat washer and our locking nut. Once you have your brackets installed, we'll tighten to the frame. Once I have my plates installed, they're tightened down, I'm going to go ahead and torque them down to the specifications in the instructions. However, I'm not going to torque these down yet. There's going to be some spacers we're going to put in underneath of our rails that we need to get in before we tighten these. Now with an extra set of hands, we'll set our slider into place. So now we're going to take pry bar. We're just going to gently lift up on this and slide our spacer block so that this part of the bed sits level with this part of the bed. And here in the back, we're going to slide it in like this way. Once you have your spacer blocks in place, you can go back down underneath and tighten everything up. Now with an extra set of hands, we'll tighten up our hex bolts that are toward the front of the vehicle. Next, we'll torque everything down to the specification and the instructions. Once we have everything tightened and torqued to the specifications, we can put in our heat shield. And that'll do it for the Demco Hijacker Premier Series above bed base rails, part number DM8552025-71 on our 2014 Ram 2500.